Before we start, make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment with where and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now let's begin. I don't usually talk about this, and honestly, I still don't have a solid explanation, but it's been sitting with me for over 2 years now, and lately, I've been having dreams about that jacket again. My name's Eric, I was 27 back then, and I used to work as a night shift manager at a Pizza Hut in Phoenix. Not a fancy one, just one of those older locations with red booths and flickering neon lights. It wasn't the worst job, but the late-night crowd could get weird. Mostly college kids, delivery drivers, sometimes people just passing through. I didn't mind the rhythm, quiet after 9, and usually dead by midnight. I had this routine down to a science. Do the final rounds, restock the napkins, count the drawer, clean the soda machine, and wait out the clock. But there was this guy who'd show up maybe 2 or 3 times a week around 11:45 p.m. He always came in alone. Late 30s, maybe early 40s. Tall, skinny, dark circles under his eyes. Looked like he hadn't slept in years. He wore this army green jacket always zipped up to his neck, even in the middle of July, and he carried this big duffel bag that he never let leave his side. He never smiled, never made small talk, just ordered a personal pan pepperoni and a bottle of water. Ate in silence. The weird thing is, I started noticing the same exact thing every time he came in. He'd sit in the same booth, far back left near the emergency exit, and he'd whisper to someone across from him. At first, I thought maybe he was on a Bluetooth headset or something, but I checked a few times discreetly and saw no device. And no one ever sat across from him, not once. He'd nod, laugh sometimes, pause like he was listening, then go back to eating. I figured he was just a little off, maybe lonely. I've seen stranger. But then those news reports started popping up in early October. A few missing persons, all from neighborhoods within 5 miles of our store. No obvious pattern. One was a Lyft driver, another a woman who worked the closing shift at a gas station, and one was a high school senior who vanished walking home from a friend's house. I didn't connect any dots at first. I mean, Phoenix is big and weird things happen all the time. But something about that guy started feeling heavier every time he walked in. Like the air changed a little. I know that sounds dramatic, but it's the best way I can describe it. One night, October 14th, a Friday, it was raining hard, which was rare for Phoenix. The store was empty except for a DoorDash pickup around 10:30, and then him. He came in exactly at 11:43 p.m. I remember the time because I had just finished wiping down the soda fountain and glanced at the clock. He looked more agitated than usual. His jacket was soaked through, clinging to his arms like wet skin, and he was gripping the duffel bag tighter than I'd ever seen. He scanned the place like he was expecting someone, or hiding from someone. I greeted him like always. He didn't say a word. I prepped his usual and brought it to his table. He didn't look up, just kept whispering. But this time, I swear to God, I heard a voice whispering back. It was low, almost like wind passing through a vent, but it was there. I froze for a second and glanced across from him. Nothing, just the red vinyl seat. I walked back to the counter trying to shake it off. Maybe it was the storm playing tricks on me. I didn't want to be the guy who starts believing ghost stories on a slow shift at Pizza Hut, but something felt off in my bones. About 15 minutes later, I noticed the guy was gone. No goodbye, no wrapper trash left behind. His food was only half eaten, the water bottle unopened. But here's the thing, the duffel bag was gone. And in its place, tucked awkwardly between the booth cushions like someone had tried to shove it out of sight in a hurry, was that army green jacket. I walked over slowly, not sure what I expected. Maybe he just forgot it. Maybe he was in the bathroom. But no, I checked. The jacket was heavy. When I picked it up, the weight told me something was very, very wrong. There was a dark reddish smear along the right sleeve near the wrist. Not ketchup, thicker, dried at the edges. I smelled it and instantly gagged. It was blood. I dropped the thing like it burned me. I remember backing away, my mind racing, trying to rationalize. Maybe he cut himself, maybe it was old. But then I noticed something else. The jacket had a name stitched inside. Trevor Marks. That wasn't his name. I don't know how I knew that, but the guy who came in here wasn't Trevor. And deep down, I knew. Trevor wasn't coming back for his jacket. I locked the front door right after that. It was only 12:20 a.m., but I didn't care. I didn't want anyone else coming in. My hands were shaking so bad I had to hold the register counter to keep steady. I debated calling the cops, but something told me to check the security footage first. We had this old system hooked up in the back office. Grainy video, but enough to make out faces. I skipped to around 11:43 and started watching. There he was, soaked, twitchy, dragging the duffel bag behind him. He sits, stares at the empty booth across, and then starts whispering. Normal so far. Then, the booth across from him shifts, like someone leaned forward. Only, there's no one there. No coat, no bag, no body. Just an indentation in the vinyl like invisible weight pressing down. At one point, he lifts a slice of pizza and offers it to the empty seat. Holds it there for almost 10 seconds before pulling it back, still whispering. Then he nods, smiles faintly, and just walks out. No bag, no jacket, just vanishes off frame like he was never there. I rewound it at least 10 times. There's no edit, no trick, just him and the absence of someone else. I did end up calling the cops after that. An officer came out around 2 a.m. I showed him the jacket, the blood, and the footage. He was polite but skeptical. Said maybe the guy had a mental illness. Maybe the blood belonged to a deer, or he worked in a butcher shop. I asked about the name Trevor Marks, and that finally got a reaction. He told me to give him a minute, stepped outside to make a call, and came back looking different. Paler, more alert. Told me to bag the jacket and not talk about this with anyone. Said they'd be in touch. They never were. I quit the next week. I couldn't unsee that footage or stop hearing those whispers. A month later, I saw a missing poster downtown for a guy named Trevor Marks. 28. Went missing after work. Lived 10 minutes from our Pizza Hut. Same night, same jacket. I've moved since then, changed numbers. But sometimes I still wonder what was in that duffel bag, or who, or what he was talking to, and whether it ever left with him, or if it stayed behind in that booth, waiting for someone else to talk to. I've been doing deliveries in Kentucky for almost 5 years now. Small towns, long stretches of empty roads, a lot of silence and open sky. My name's Tyler, I'm 28, and at the time this happened, back in the fall of 2022, I was picking up evening shifts for Pizza Hut near the outskirts of Elizabethtown. Nothing fancy, just trying to save up for a down payment on a used truck. I'd gotten used to the weird mix of boredom and paranoia that comes with night shifts out in the rural backroads. But what happened that Thursday night still messes with my head, and I've never talked about it publicly. Until now. It was around 9:45 p.m. when the last order came through. The system pinged me with a delivery request. 1 large meat lover's pizza, 2 bottles of Coke. The address was weird. It didn't have a house number, just Miller's Junction, and a note that said, "Use side door." That name rang a bell, but I couldn't place it. I asked my manager, Dave, and he shrugged. Probably a trailer or some old roadside place. GPS says it's off Highway 62 just past the creek. You good to take it? I was already halfway out the door. The quicker I finished, the quicker I could clock out. The drive took me about 25 minutes. No streetlights out there, just trees, broken fences, and the occasional flicker of a farmhouse window in the distance. My GPS kept glitching, recalculating every half mile. I was about to call it quits when I saw the faded green sign, Miller's Junction Gas and Auto, since 1976. The place was a ruin. I mean, really dead. Roof sagging, boards nailed over the windows, the pump station rusted and overgrown with weeds. But what froze me wasn't the building itself. It was the fact that the open sign was faintly glowing red in the window, flickering like it was on backup power or something. I almost turned around. I should have. But I'd already driven all the way out, and someone had placed a prepaid order with a good tip. I parked near the front and walked over to the side door. My boots crunched on gravel and broken glass. I knocked, half expecting no one to answer. Then I heard it, a voice, a low, scratchy man's voice from inside saying 1 second. The hairs on my arm stood up. A few seconds later, the door creaked open just a sliver. I didn't see much, just a dark hallway behind it and a hand sticking out with exact cash, $24.86 to the penny. I didn't even say anything, just handed over the box and drinks. The hand disappeared, the door shut. Click. The whole thing lasted maybe 20 seconds, but something about it felt off. I've handed pizzas to hundreds of people, but this one didn't feel human. I don't even know how to explain it. The hand that took the box, it was pale, dry like paper, with long fingers and dirt under the nails. I kept replaying that detail in my head as I got back into the car. The dashboard clock said 10:21 p.m. I remember because I kept staring at it like it would explain something. Then I looked back at the building and the open sign had gone dark, completely off, like someone had pulled the plug the second I walked away. Back at the restaurant, Dave asked how it went. I told him the place was boarded up and looked abandoned. He frowned and pulled up Google Maps on the register computer. "Miller's Junction?" he muttered, squinting. Then he turned the screen toward me. The satellite image was from a year ago. It showed the gas station all right, but with a big red banner across it that read "Closed indefinitely. No trespassing." We both stared at it in silence for a second. Then Dave laughed it off. "Maybe someone's squatting in there or something. Don't worry about it." But I did worry about it. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that hand again, reaching out from the dark. Something about it felt too deliberate. I called the non-emergency police line the next morning, just to report it in case it was a squatter or someone who needed help. The guy on the phone took my name and said they'd send someone out. Didn't seem too concerned. I almost felt stupid for calling. But later that afternoon, I got a voicemail from a Deputy Rollins asking me to call him back. The tone of his voice didn't sound casual at all. When I got through, the deputy asked me to walk him through the whole thing again. So I did. After a long pause, he said, "Our guys went out there around 11 this morning. There's no one there. Place is completely sealed up. Dust everywhere. No recent footprints. But there was something." He hesitated. "One of the guys found a fresh Pizza Hut box sitting in the middle of the floor. Still warm inside, like it had just been delivered. But there was nobody there, and no one could have left without us seeing him." I didn't say anything. I just remember sitting on my porch in total silence, phone pressed to my ear, heart pounding like I'd run a marathon. I asked Deputy Rollins if they checked for cameras or signs that someone had been living there. He said they did a full sweep. No power running to the building. No fresh food, no blankets, no makeshift setup. Just that one box on the floor, a little bit of condensation still clinging to the inside of the lid. "Whoever was there," he said, "they didn't leave through a door or window, and there's no sign anyone forced entry to begin with. It's like they appeared just long enough to take the delivery and vanished." I didn't know what to say to that. It didn't feel like a mystery. It felt like I had been part of something I wasn't supposed to see. Over the next few days, I kept checking Google for updates. Local news, police reports, nothing. I even drove back out there once, just to prove to myself it wasn't all in my head. This time it was broad daylight. The gas station looked even worse in the sun. Graffiti peeling off the walls, shingles missing from the roof, vines clawing up the side of the building. I walked around it twice. No tire tracks, no recent footprints except my own. When I looked through a crack in one of the boards, I saw the same hallway, empty, dead still. But what messed me up most, there was no smell, not of pizza, not of dust, nothing. Like the air inside had been vacuum sealed. I told my girlfriend at the time, Amber, about it, and she didn't take it well. She begged me to quit that job. Said she'd heard stories like that before where people got dragged into something by accident. I thought she was being dramatic, but deep down part of me agreed. I never took a delivery that far out again. Dave never brought up the order either, which was weird, because that wasn't like him. Usually he'd joke about stuff like that for days. Instead, he just acted like it never happened, like none of it ever showed up in the system. And honestly, maybe it didn't. I never saw that address pop up again. What still gets me is how exact the cash was. Not $25. Not even rounded up. $24.86 to the cent. Like someone knew exactly what the price would be, taxes and all. No one does that. People give you a 5 or a 10 and tell you to keep the change, especially out in rural areas. That kind of precision isn't normal. It's calculated. And that's what haunts me the most. Not the boarded up station, not the weird hand, but the fact that someone or something knew I was coming and was ready for me. After that night, I kept the receipt from the order. I know it sounds stupid, but I needed proof it really happened. A few months later, I looked at it again and noticed something I hadn't caught before. Under customer name, it just said Miller. No first name, no phone number, just Miller. I asked Dave if there was any way to track it back in the system. He pulled up the order history, typed in the date, and frowned. "There's no Miller in here, man. You sure you delivered that night?" I showed him the receipt, and he went pale. Said that ticket number wasn't even in our register sequence. I never went back to that station. Couldn't even bring myself to drive past it again. I ended up switching to daytime shifts a few weeks later, then quit altogether the next spring. Started working construction instead. Less weird, more solid. But sometimes when I'm driving through back roads or see a boarded up shop on the side of the highway, I get this awful feeling in my chest. Like I'm gonna turn and see a faint red neon open, flickering behind the boards. And that pale hand, waiting. I don't think it was a ghost. I don't think it was a squatter either. I think it was something else entirely. Something that doesn't belong in our version of the world but slips in when no one's paying attention. I delivered food to something that shouldn't have been there. And the fact that it paid me like everything was normal makes it 10 times worse. Because it means it wanted to be found. Or maybe worse, it wanted to be fed. I've told this story to a few people in person, and most of them laugh it off or say I made it up. That's fine. I'm not trying to convince anyone. I just wanted to put it out there for whoever needs to hear it. If you ever get sent to a place that looks like it's been dead for years, with no lights and no life, just don't knock. Some doors aren't meant to open again. Some places stay closed for a reason, and if you see a glowing red sign in the dark, trust me, keep driving. I'm not one for ghost stories or any of that supernatural crap. I'm a pretty grounded guy. Grew up in Akron, Ohio, raised on Browns games and pepperoni slices. Back in 2021, I was 23, working the night shift at Pizza Hut while trying to save up for a beat-up Ford Escape. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid my rent and let me crash at my buddy Tyler's place, splitting bills while we figured life out. Most nights were dead. A few late-night orders from weedheads or drunk college kids. Nothing out of the ordinary. That night, though, Ridgeway Lane changed everything. It was a Tuesday. Cold as hell. My shift was dragging when the system lit up with a delivery to an address I hadn't seen in the queue before. 1742 Ridgeway Lane. The weird thing, that street had a bit of a reputation. Back in high school, everyone knew about the house on Ridgeway. The one where a dad snapped and killed his wife, teenage son, and himself. It had been in the news for weeks. Last I'd heard, the city condemned it and tore the place down. So when the GPS pinged that exact address, I assumed it was just a new construction, or maybe a renumbered lot. I grabbed the medium meat lovers and a 2-liter of Pepsi, jumped in the company Corolla, and headed out. It was about a 15-minute drive from the store. The neighborhood started thinning out into older homes with big trees and that eerie quiet you only get after 10 p.m. in small towns. As I turned onto Ridgeway Lane, Something felt off. Not just nerves. I've done late-night runs before. This was a silence that pressed against the windows. No porch lights, no dogs barking. Just my headlights sweeping over empty driveways and cracked sidewalks. When I finally pulled up to 1742, my stomach dropped. The house looked exactly like I remembered from those old news reports. Same warped porch, same second-story window boarded halfway. But what really screwed with me? The porch light was on, and there was someone standing at the door, just standing there. Not moving, not waving, just waiting. My instinct told me to back out, call it in, maybe make up a flat tire. But I was already behind on orders, and the guy hadn't even tipped in the app, so I figured maybe cash. I grabbed the pizza and stepped out into the cold. As I got closer to the house, I could finally see the guy a little better. He was tall, maybe 6'2", wearing a faded Cleveland Browns hoodie with the hood pulled up. I remember thinking how weird it was that he wasn't moving at all. Not even a shift of weight, not even a glance toward me, just staring straight ahead like a statue. The porch light buzzed faintly above him, casting this yellow glow that made his face hard to see, almost like it was half in shadow no matter where I stood. I stopped at the first step and held the box out. "Pizza Hut?" I asked. No answer. He didn't nod, didn't speak, just reached out, slow and stiff, and took the box like it weighed 200 pounds. I stood there awkwardly, waiting for payment. "It's 1862, I said, trying not to sound nervous. Still nothing. He just turned slowly like he was underwater and walked back inside. Left the door wide open behind him. I could see the entryway, old wallpaper peeling near the ceiling, this busted wooden side table with what looked like a stack of yellowed newspapers on it. There was this smell, too, like damp wood and something else underneath. Something metallic. I waited a beat, then called out, "Hey man, the cash?" He didn't come back. I wasn't about to walk into a stranger's house, especially that house, so I turned around and got the hell out of there. When I got back to the store, I told Tyler about it. He was working oven that night. He's into weird history stuff and immediately pulled out his phone. Sure enough, he found an article confirming what I thought. 1742 Ridgeway Lane had been demolished in 2017. Full teardown. There were even pictures of the empty lot. We double-checked the GPS on my phone. Still showed the same damn address, pinned exactly where I'd been. I even showed him the delivery receipt. It had the number listed, a 330 area code. Looked totally normal. But when he tried calling it, it rang once and went to some generic disconnection message. He looked at me like I was crazy. I didn't sleep much that night. 3 days later, it got worse. I was back on shift, just me and this high schooler named Reggie doing prep. Around 9:45, another order came through. Same number, same address, same name on the ticket, Caleb M. The system flagged it in red with a note I'd never seen before. "This number is no longer in service, do not dispatch." But the order still came through like nothing was wrong. I stared at it for a good 30 seconds. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to delete it and pretend I never saw it. But something about it pulled at me, like unfinished business. Against every ounce of common sense, I printed the receipt and grabbed the pizza. Reggie looked at me like I was out of my mind. "Dude, you're not seriously going back there?" he asked. I didn't have a good answer. It was like I needed to know if I'd imagined the first time. Maybe it was just an old house rebuilt. Maybe I delivered to the wrong place. Maybe I was just overtired that night. I told Reggie I'd be quick and bolted before I could talk myself out of it. As I drove toward Ridgeway, I started noticing little things that made my skin crawl. My GPS kept glitching. The road would disappear for a few seconds, then reappear. The clock on the dash flickered and reset itself to 12 twice. Static crackled faintly through the speakers, even though the radio was off. When I turned onto Ridgeway Lane, I swear it looked darker than usual. Like the trees swallowed the streetlight. I slowed to a crawl and approached the lot. Only this time, there was no house, just dirt. Flat, undisturbed dirt and some leftover caution tape fluttering from a fence post. I stopped the car and just stared. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. I got out, thinking maybe I'd gone to the wrong address, maybe I'd misread the numbers. But no. Right there on the crumpled curbside was the spray-painted 1742, clear as day. I was standing in front of an empty lot. No lights, no porch, no man. I backed up slowly and turned to leave when I heard it, a faint thump like footsteps on wood. My head snapped toward the lot, nothing. But then I saw it, a faint glow like candlelight, deep inside where the house should have stood. Not on the surface, like underground. Then a voice. Not loud, not close, but I'll never forget it. It was Caleb's voice, flat and calm. "You forgot the Pepsi." I swear to God, I dropped the pizza right there in the dirt and ran. I didn't even shut the car door before peeling off down the street. When I got back to the store, Reggie saw my face and didn't ask a single question. Just handed me a cold bottle of water and sat with me in the back room while I tried to stop shaking. I reported the number to the manager the next day. She checked with corporate. The system flagged that phone as disconnected in 2018. It had been dead for over 3 years. There were no delivery records tied to that number except for mine. She looked at me like I was making it up, said I must have entered it manually, but I didn't. I still had both receipts, printed straight from the system. Same number, same address, same name. No one believed me, of course. A week later, I quit that job. Couldn't drive past Ridgeway Lane without feeling like something was watching from the trees. I never went back. I used to close at a Pizza Hut in Lafayette, Indiana. This was around late 2019, maybe November. I was 21 at the time, finishing community college and working nights to cover rent and keep gas in my car. I'd usually lock up the restaurant around midnight, sometimes later if we were slammed. My manager, Denise, was a bit scatterbrained, but she trusted me, and I'd gotten used to being the last one in the building. It was a weird kind of peace. The ovens cooling down, the mop water still, the hum of the soda machine in the background. I had my routine, and I liked the quiet after hours. That night started out like any other, until it didn't. About 30 minutes into my shift, Denise popped her head into the kitchen and told me someone would be shadowing me that night. Said his name was Kyle, part-time, just hired. I remember looking up from slicing pepperoni and saying, okay? She gave me this half-apologetic shrug and said she had to head out early. It wasn't totally out of the ordinary. We were understaffed, and sometimes people started before the paperwork fully cleared. A few minutes later, this tall, skinny guy walks in through the back door. He had on a black hoodie, Pizza Hut cap, and looked like he hadn't slept in days. Pale skin, dark circles under his eyes, and this twitchy energy, like he was trying hard to seem chill but couldn't sit still. I introduced myself. "Hey, I'm Mark." And he just sort of nodded and mumbled, "Kyle." No handshake, no small talk. Fine, whatever. I showed him around the back line, explained how we prepped the dough trays, where to stack boxes, how to refill the toppings. He barely responded, just followed close behind me. Too close, like he was studying the way I moved more than what I was doing. I figured he was just nervous, or maybe on something, honestly. At one point, I looked over and he was staring at the order screen like he was reading something invisible on it. I said, "You good, man?" And he snapped out of it like I'd just shaken him awake. "Yeah, just watching," he said. Things got weirder from there. We weren't that busy, so I asked him to start wiping down the prep area while I handled some late delivery orders. I turned my back for maybe 5 minutes, and when I came back, he was just gone. I called out, walked toward the dry storage. Nothing. Then I heard this weird rustling sound near the walk-in freezer. When I opened it, he was standing inside, not even shivering, just staring at the shelves like he'd never seen frozen dough before. I asked him what the hell he was doing in there, and he just said, "It's quieter." I laughed awkwardly and said, Okay, but you'll freeze your ass off in 5 minutes, man. He walked out without a word and went right back to cleaning, like nothing happened. Around 10:30 p.m., Kyle started asking me questions that felt off, not about the job, but about me. "Do you live alone?" he asked while wiping the soda machine. I played it off, said, "Nah, I've got roommates," which wasn't true. Then he asked, "Do you ever feel watched when you're here by yourself?" I stopped what I was doing and looked at him. He had this half smile like he already knew the answer. I told him, "Man, it's just a job. I clean, I lock up, I go home." He nodded slowly like he was disappointed. The vibe shifted after that. He started humming this weird, broken melody while folding pizza boxes. Not a tune I recognized, more like a pattern, a hum-stop-hum-again kind of thing, like Morse code. At around 11:15, I went to take the trash out through the back door. It opens into this alleyway behind the strip mall, dimly lit with a single flickering light. I remember the air being extra still that night. As I tossed the trash bag, I felt something shift, like the energy around me dropped 10 degrees. When I turned around, Kyle was standing halfway out the door, holding it open with his shoulder, staring at me. No expression. I jumped a bit, said, "Dude, you scared the hell out of me." He didn't laugh, didn't even blink, just said, "You shouldn't turn your back when it's dark." That was it. No context, no smile, just that sentence. Then he turned and went back inside. By now I was thoroughly creeped out. I texted Denise and asked, "Hey, when exactly did you hire Kyle?" No reply. I kept working, tried to focus on closing out the register and counting inventory, but Kyle started wandering. Literally just walking in circles around the dining area, arms behind his back like he was inspecting something only he could see. At one point I heard him whispering, not to me, just whispering to the empty room. I asked him what he was doing and he said, "Just checking for exits." That was the last straw. I called Denise again, no answer. I even thought about calling the cops but didn't know what I'd report. My co-worker's acting weird, doesn't exactly get a squad car sent. Right before midnight, he disappeared again. I searched the kitchen, the freezer, the back alley. Nothing. I was just about to lock up early and leave when I heard the sound of a door creaking open. The women's restroom. I walked over slowly, heart thudding in my ears. I pushed the door in and found it empty, at first. Then I noticed the stall at the end was shut. I called out, "Kyle?" Nothing. I stepped closer, the floor echoing every footstep. Just as I reached to knock on the door, it slammed open. Kyle stood there inches from my face, eyes wide like he'd been waiting for me. "You're not supposed to see me yet," he said. His voice was calm, but something about that sentence chilled me to my core. I stumbled back, knocking into the paper towel dispenser. My brain scrambled to make sense of what he'd just said. Not supposed to see me yet? What did that even mean? Kyle stepped out of the stall, calm as ever, like he hadn't just scared the life out of me. I muttered something like, "Man, what's your deal?" But he didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his hoodie pocket and pulled out a folded receipt, one of ours with our store number and timestamp, and handed it to me. I looked down and saw something scribbled on the back in black pen. "He watches who stays late." That's all it said. No signature, no explanation. I looked up to ask what it meant, but Kyle was already walking out of the restroom, slow and deliberate. That's when I decided I wasn't spending one more minute in that place. I grabbed my jacket, phone, and keys and walked straight out the front door without even locking up. I sat in my car for a few minutes, trying to calm my hands enough to text Denise again. This time I wrote, "I don't know who you left with me tonight, but I'm not okay. That guy is messed up." She didn't respond right away, but I drove home anyway. I locked every door and window, left a light on in every room, and barely slept. The next morning, Denise finally called. She sounded confused, groggy, like I'd woken her. I asked her point blank, "Who the hell is Kyle?" There was a pause. Then she said, "Kyle?" I repeated, "Yeah, The guy you said would shadow me, the one you left me with last night." Her voice got real quiet. "Mark, I never hired anyone named Kyle. I didn't tell you anyone was coming in." I froze. I told her everything: the hoodie, the staring, the freezer, the whispering, the bathroom. Denise swore up and down she didn't know what I was talking about. She even went into the system while we were on the phone and checked the applications, onboarding records, timesheets. No Kyle. Not even a recent interview with that name. He wasn't in the system, like he never existed. I went back to work 2 days later, only during the day shift. I never closed again. Denise ended up changing the locks and security codes. We even filed a report with the police, but nothing ever came of it. No one matching Kyle's description was ever caught on any nearby cameras, including ours. It still freaks me out. Sometimes I wonder if it was just some drifter who got lucky and played a sick game or something else. All I know is, someone walked into our store that night, acted like they belonged, and vanished like they were never there. But I saw him, I talked to him, and I still have that receipt. I keep it in a box under my bed just in case. I was 19 at the time, working nights as a delivery driver for a Pizza Hut just off the I-15 in southern Nevada. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid my half of the rent for the 2-bedroom I shared with my cousin in Henderson. Most nights were uneventful. Music turned up, desert air blowing through the cracked window, and the occasional weirdo tipping with nickels or asking for extra garlic sauce like their life depended on it. But one delivery in particular still messes with my head. I've tried to write it off 100 different ways, but every time I think I've got a logical explanation, something about it still doesn't sit right. It was a Thursday night, early April I think, and business was dead. I was scrolling through my phone behind the counter when a late order popped up for a medium pepperoni and a 2-liter Sprite. The address was a roadside motel about 20 minutes away, just past Sloan. We didn't deliver out there often. Most of the time, people that far out either picked it up or didn't bother at all. But the night manager, Marcia, shrugged and said, "If you're up for the miles, take it. It's dead anyway." So I grabbed the heat bag, slid the receipt in the outer pocket, and hit the road. The place was called Desert View Inn, one of those run-down, neon-flickering motels with 2 levels and exterior stairs. The kind of place that looked like it had stories to tell, most of them sad or illegal. Room 12 was at the far end, tucked into the corner where the second-floor railing curved toward the parking lot. I remember the way the light above the door buzzed like it was shorting out. The guy who opened the door was maybe mid-30s, wiry, pale, and sweating like he'd just sprinted a mile. He looked behind me before saying a word. Then, instead of thanks or hey, he asked, "You guys got cameras in your cars?" I blinked and said, no, just the GPS tracker for the app." He looked relieved but still twitchy, like he was waiting for something. That's good," he muttered, then asked, "How long do you keep order records?" I told him I had no idea, and he nodded slowly like he was thinking hard. Then he paid in cash, didn't take the receipt, and shut the door before I could ask if he needed napkins. I stood there a second, listening through the door, but all I heard was the clink of the chain lock sliding into place. I didn't think much about the guy after that, just chalked it up to another strange motel customer and drove back to the store. But 3 nights later, I was getting ready to head out on another delivery when I reached into my heat bag to double-check the receipt pocket. We're supposed to clean out old slips at the end of each shift, but something caught my eye. There was a single folded paper that wasn't from Pizza Hut. It was thin, almost glossy, like the kind you get from gas stations or hotels. I pulled it out and unfolded it, and my stomach dropped a little. It was a checkout receipt from the Desert View Inn, room 12. The name on the folio wasn't one I recognized, but the weirdest part, the checkout date said April 12th. That was 4 days away. At first I thought maybe I'd just read it wrong. Maybe the guy had booked a few extra nights and left the slip in the bag by mistake. But then it hit me. The delivery was on April 4th. So how the hell could there be a receipt from the same room with a checkout date that hadn't happened yet? I went through every pocket of my uniform, the car, the store's counter. No one else had touched my bag. It just didn't make sense. I showed it to Marcia, and she laughed it off like maybe the guy was trying to freak me out. "Some people are just creepy," she said. "Toss it." But I didn't toss it. Something about that receipt kept eating at me like a splinter under my skin. I ended up calling the motel a few days later. I gave them the room number and the name on the receipt, I think it was Michael Graves, and asked if they could confirm the stay. The guy on the phone hesitated, then said, "We've never had anyone by that name in our system. Not this month. Not ever." I asked if he was sure, and he got kind of cold. "I manage the books myself," he said. "No Michael Graves, and no one checked into room 12 the week of the 4th. I thanked him and hung up, heart pounding in my ears. I still have the receipt. It's crumpled now, the ink's starting to fade, but I kept it. I don't know why, maybe part of me thinks I'll eventually figure it out. But that whole week after the call, weird things kept happening. I'd come back to my car and the doors would be unlocked when I was sure I locked them. Once, I found the glove box wide open and my flashlight on the floor, batteries drained. Another night, I came out after closing to find my driver's seat pushed all the way back like someone taller had been sitting in it. I started checking the back seat every time I got in, locking the doors the second I sat down. I even switched bags, but the paranoia stuck. One night, about a week after all this started, I got off late and decided to stop at a gas station near the edge of town. I pulled into the lot, and as I walked back to my car with a bottle of soda, I froze. Across the lot, near the payphone nobody ever used, stood a man in a dark hoodie and jeans, just watching me. I couldn't see his face, but something about his posture felt familiar. He wasn't doing anything, just standing there, hands in his pockets, angled slightly toward my car. I glanced down to unlock my door, and when I looked back up, he was gone. Not walking away, gone. The kind of gone that doesn't make sense unless someone was never really there to begin with. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the apartment made me jump. I ended up sitting on the couch until morning, with the receipt on the coffee table like it might explain something if I stared long enough. I tried looking up the name again, Michael Graves. There were a few hits online, but nothing tied to Nevada. No missing person, no crime reports, just dead ends. I even drove back to the Desert View Inn on my day off just to see it in daylight. The door to room 12 was open. Not wide open, just slightly ajar. There was no car in front of it, and when I knocked, no one answered. I didn't go inside. The next day at work, I finally told one of the other drivers, Kyle, about everything. He looked spooked and said, "Dude, that's the room where that guy shot himself a couple years ago. I remember it. It was all over the local news. He checked in with a fake name, no ID, no credit card. They only found him because the maid went in 2 days later and..." He stopped himself. "You said he asked about cameras?" I nodded. "Damn, that's messed up." I made him swear not to tell anyone else. I don't know why. Maybe because the whole thing felt too personal. Like if I shared it too much, it might get worse. After that, I stopped doing deliveries outside of town. I stuck to neighborhoods, gated communities, apartment complexes where you buzz in and wave at someone's Ring camera. The memory still creeps up sometimes when I least expect it. Like the time I found my old heat bag in storage and couldn't bring myself to unzip it. Or when I passed a different motel on a road trip and instinctively checked the rearview mirror 5 times in a row. I never saw that man again, and nothing ever came of the receipt. But I swear to God, something followed me back from that delivery. And whatever it was, it knew I'd looked too closely. Eventually, I moved out of Nevada, transferred to a different store in Oregon, closer to my brother. I left the receipt behind, tucked into the back of a journal I kept but never finished. I haven't seen anything since. Haven't felt that gnawing unease when I get into my car or glance in the rear view. But sometimes, late at night, I'll still dream of room 12. I'm standing at the door, knocking, and I know someone's inside, watching me. I don't know who the man was or what he was so desperate to hide, but I'm convinced I was part of something that wasn't meant to be seen. Maybe it ended when I left the state. Maybe I was just lucky. But I don't take cash deliveries anymore, and I never ignore that feeling in my gut, the one that says something's off. Because once I did. And it followed me home. I used to be the assistant manager at a Pizza Hut in a small town just outside Macon, Georgia. This was around 2017. I was 27 at the time, trying to piece my life back together after a messy breakup and some debt that had piled up. The store was one of those older locations tucked between a gas station and a pawn shop, and it had that weird red roof that looked more like a hat than a building. I worked the closing shifts most nights, which meant I was the last to leave, sometimes past 2 a.m. Once the floors were mopped, the ovens were off, and the security system was set. I was meticulous. I had to be. That job was all I had keeping me steady. We had this old CCTV system with a black and white feed split across 4 dusty monitors in the back office. Most of the cameras pointed at the parking lot, the register, and the dining room. Nothing fancy. No night vision, no sound. Just grainy footage with a timestamp that lagged a few seconds behind real time. At first, I didn't notice the glitch. It was subtle. One of the kitchen crew, Jesse, joked one night that the screen always blinked around 2:15 a.m., right when he was finishing the mop-up. I brushed it off. The system was old. We all blamed it on loose wires or power surges from the HVAC unit that always rattled like it was falling apart. But the glitch kept happening. Every night between 2:10 and 2:20, the feed from camera 3, the one aimed directly at the dining area, would freeze for about 8 minutes. Sometimes it went static. Other times it just paused, like someone had hit the pause button. Then it would snap back, and everything looked exactly the same. Chairs still stacked, lights still off. Nothing seemed out of place. Still, something about the way it happened, so exact, so routine, started to get under my skin. I'd go home thinking about it, lying in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering if it was just me being paranoid or if something was actually happening during that blackout window. After about 2 weeks of this, I decided I wasn't going to leave at closing. I didn't tell the crew. I just said I had paperwork to catch up on. I stayed in the back office, lights off, coffee in hand, eyes glued to the monitors. It was boring at first. Just the usual. Empty parking lot, flickering fluorescent lights, nothing moving. But right at 2:10, just like clockwork, camera 3 cut out. Static. I leaned forward, heart thumping. I don't know what I expected to see when it came back on, but I sure as hell wasn't prepared for what showed up. At exactly 2:20 a.m., the feed came back, and there he was. A man, just sitting in one of the booths by the window. He wasn't doing anything, just sitting perfectly still, like he'd been there for hours. He looked to be in his 50s, maybe 60s, wearing a dark coat kind of threadbare, with grayish hair slicked back and a long face that looked off. Not creepy in a horror movie way, but in that uncanny, wrong place, wrong time way. The thing that froze me wasn't just that he was inside, but that the front doors had been locked, double-checked by me, and the alarm had never tripped. There was no motion alert, no door chime, just this man sitting there like he belonged. I stared at the screen, trying to convince myself it was a glitch, maybe a loop of old footage, but I'd checked the logs. We didn't store footage older than 48 hours, and I knew those booths had been empty when we closed. I got up, opened the office door just a crack, and peered out toward the dining room. Nothing. Completely empty. The man wasn't there, but the camera still showed him, just sitting, motionless. I stepped back inside and looked at the feed again. Still there. Same booth. I remember whispering, "What the hell?" out loud, as if hearing my own voice would make the moment make sense. I watched him until 2:28 a.m., and just as suddenly as he appeared, the feed blinked again, only for a second this time, and he was gone. Booth empty. No movement, no flicker, no exit. Just gone. I don't know how long I sat there after that, staring at the monitor like it might explain itself. I didn't sleep that night. Didn't even leave the store until 5 a.m. When the sun started coming up, I did a sweep of the dining room before I left. Everything looked normal. But something kept gnawing at me, like I'd missed something obvious. The next morning, I got in early before anyone else. I wanted to check the place in daylight. As soon as I walked into the dining area, I noticed it. The chairs were all stacked differently. We always stacked them 4 to a table diagonally for easy sweeping. But now they were crisscrossed almost in a pattern, like someone had taken their time arranging them that way. And on one of the tables, the same booth I'd seen the man in, there was a small folded piece of paper. I thought it was trash at first, but when I picked it up, I saw it was a note. Written in blue ink and shaky handwriting, it said just one thing. "Thank you for watching." I just stood there holding that note, completely still. My hands were sweating. I kept rereading the words like they might shift or change meaning if I stared long enough. "Thank you for watching." It wasn't threatening, it wasn't aggressive, but something about the tone felt personal, like whoever or whatever left it knew exactly what I'd done, what I'd seen. I checked every door, all locked. I asked the morning crew if anyone had come in early or if anyone had keys besides me and the general manager. Nobody had. And the alarm log showed nothing. No entries, no exits, no tampering. It was like he'd appeared from nowhere and vanished just the same. I debated telling the GM, but what was I supposed to say? "Hey, a ghost came in and rearranged the furniture?" I'd sound insane, so I kept it to myself, but I did take the note, folded it back up, kept it in my wallet for a long time. Weeks went by. I kept watching the cameras after closing, waiting for the glitch, but it never happened again. No more feed cuts. No more mystery man. Everything just went back to normal. Like that one night had been a window into something else, something I wasn't supposed to see, or maybe something that wanted to be seen, just once. Even now I can't explain it. I've worked in other restaurants since then, in different towns, with different people, and nothing like that has ever happened again. Sometimes I think I imagined it, that I let the long hours and late nights get to my head. But then I find that note again, stuffed between receipts and old insurance cards, and I remember how real it felt. How cold the booth was when I touched it the next day. How the chairs made no sound when I restacked them, like they'd already settled into place and didn't want to be moved. I still don't understand what I saw that night, but I'm certain of one thing. Someone was there. I was 21 when this happened, working part-time at a Pizza Hut in a small town called Middlebury, Vermont. It was early 2023, still cold enough that the wind cut through your jacket, and most days the snow stayed frozen on the sidewalk. I'd just dropped out of college and moved back in with my mom while I figured my life out, which, to be honest, mostly meant taking whatever job I could get. Pizza Hut wasn't glamorous, but the people were decent, and the hours didn't suck. I usually worked late shifts, cleaning, restocking, locking up. Nothing weird ever happened there, until that Tuesday night. It started with something stupid, an overstuffed cleaning closet near the back exit. My shift lead, Sarah, mid-30s, short hair, always wore 2 watches for some reason, asked me to clear it out so we could make space for new mop buckets. The closet smelled like old grease and plastic, and it was packed with cracked chairs, unopened syrup boxes, and yellowing paper towels. Buried behind a stack of dusty trays, I found a small cardboard shoebox taped shut. Inside was a rusted key, long, old-fashioned, with a rounded handle and jagged teeth. It looked like something out of a horror movie. I joked that we'd found a treasure map or something, but Sarah didn't laugh. She just went real quiet. I remember the way she looked at it, like someone seeing a face they'd tried hard to forget. Then she said, barely above a whisper, "That belongs to the basement. Just leave it." I didn't even know we had a basement. She told me it had been sealed off since something happened way back in the 90s, but wouldn't say what. When I asked if we were allowed down there, she shook her head fast and said, "Nobody goes down there, not anymore." I put the key back in the shoebox and slid it to the back of the closet, figuring she was just being dramatic. But that night, when the kitchen was empty and I was finishing my close duties alone, I heard something that made my stomach drop. It started as a faint tapping, like metal gently knocking against concrete. At first, I thought it was the fryer cooling down or maybe the ice machine, but then it turned into this dragging sound, slow, uneven, like someone pulling something heavy across tile. It was coming from underneath the kitchen floor. I froze. There were no vents or pipes down there, nothing that would make that kind of sound. I even opened the walk-in fridge just to be sure no one was messing around. Empty. The sound stopped when I moved, like it knew I was listening. I didn't stay long after that. I locked up and got out of there fast, heart racing like I'd just run a mile. Something felt off. Not just creepy, but wrong. The next morning I got to work early. I don't even know why. I think part of me wanted to prove I hadn't imagined it. I went straight to the cleaning closet to check on the key. The box was still there, but when I opened it, it was empty. No key. I checked the floor, behind the shelves, even the trash nearby. Nothing. I figured maybe Sarah had taken it or maybe someone was playing a dumb prank. But then I walked toward the back hallway, where the door to the basement supposedly was. We always passed it. Just a sealed steel door with no handle, painted over like it didn't exist. Only now, it was open. Not all the way, just cracked, a few inches. Enough to see that it wasn't just an empty storage space behind it. There were stairs. Narrow, steep, and covered in dust that looked untouched for years, except for a single set of footprints going down. It was like someone had stepped out of a photograph. Perfect prints, one after the other, deep in the grime like the floor was soft. My skin went cold. I stood there for a good minute just staring. I wanted to call someone, maybe Sarah, but my phone was dead. I'd forgotten to charge it the night before. And the weirdest part? The building was dead quiet. No music from the kitchen speakers, no hum from the soda machine. Just silence. I backed away, closed the door gently, and ran to the front. I told myself I'd wait until Sarah arrived and then tell her everything. But when she showed up, she looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept at all. Her eyes were red and she kept rubbing her temples. I barely had to say anything. She cut me off, saying, "Don't go near that door again, I'm serious, Lucas." First time she ever called me by name. I asked her what happened in the 90s, and she muttered something about a night shift worker disappearing. They never found him, just his radio and one of his shoes at the bottom of the stairs. Corporate sealed it all off after that. "It's not a prank," she said. "Some doors should stay shut." I tried to act normal through my shift, but I was distracted. Every time I walked past that hallway, I felt like I was being watched. Not from behind, but below. Like something deep in the ground was waiting for me to get close. I kept telling myself I was being paranoid, imagining things. But just before closing, I was in the kitchen wiping down the prep table, and I swear, I heard someone whisper my name. Not loud, more like a breath. Lucas. It came from the floor drain near the fryer. I dropped the rag and stumbled back, nearly knocking over the sauce bin. When I looked around, no one was there, but the drain cover had shifted slightly, just enough to see that the screws were missing. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying the sound of my name being whispered through that drain, the image of that open basement door, and the fact that the key had just vanished. The logical part of me wanted to believe this was just stress, lack of sleep, overactive imagination. But the thing is, I'd never had experiences like this before. No sleep paralysis, no hallucinations, no mental health issues. I was your average guy just trying to earn a paycheck. And now I couldn't even walk through the kitchen without looking over my shoulder. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I had to go back. Not because I was brave, I was terrified. but I needed to know if someone or something was down there. I brought a flashlight with me, one of those big yellow industrial ones with a cracked handle that we used during power outages. I waited until my shift ended and the restaurant was completely empty. I even double-checked the security cameras and saw no one had touched the back hallway all day. I walked slowly to the basement door, which this time was wide open. Not cracked, wide. The hallway lights didn't reach past the threshold, so it was just black beyond the top step. I turned on the flashlight and took a deep breath. The air coming up from the stairwell smelled like wet concrete and moldy wood. And something else. Something sharp, metallic, like blood on rusty metal. The steps creaked under my feet as I went down. Each one groaned like it hadn't held weight in decades. The beam of light bounced off crumbling brick walls and a dirt floor below. At the bottom, I found a room that looked like an unfinished storage area. Old shelves, rotting crates, what looked like a broken pizza oven against the far wall. And then I saw the carvings. On the walls, floor, and even parts of the ceiling, thin scratch marks like someone had dragged nails or metal across the surface over and over again. Some of the marks were names, first names, etched deeply. I saw Tommy, Karen, Angela. Then at the very end of the wall, one name freshly cut, Lucas. I froze. My chest tightened. The air felt heavier down there, like I was breathing through a wet towel. I spun around with the flashlight, scanning every shadow. That's when I noticed the footprints again, fresh ones, leading further into a narrow hallway I hadn't seen before. I didn't want to follow them. Every instinct screamed, "Get out," but my legs moved anyway. I followed the prints about 10 feet until I heard something behind me, fast, like someone running barefoot across the dirt floor. I turned and caught a glimpse of a figure, a blur of motion, crouched, limbs too long for its body, disappearing behind a stack of crates. I bolted up the stairs, skipping 3 steps at a time, slamming into the kitchen door so hard it rattled on its hinges. I didn't stop running until I got to my car. I didn't even clock out. I just drove straight home, hands shaking the whole way. I kept checking the rearview mirror like I expected to see that thing, whatever it was, crawling out of the back seat. That night, I locked my bedroom door for the first time in years and slept with the light on, fully dressed, shoes on, keys in my pocket. I didn't go to work the next day. I didn't even call. I just stayed in bed, staring at the wall, trying to convince myself it hadn't happened. But I couldn't, because I remembered the carvings. I remembered my name on that wall. Someone, something, knew I'd be down there. 2 days later, Sarah showed up at my front door. She looked like hell, pale, sleep-deprived, and somehow older. She didn't wait to be invited in. She just stepped inside, looked me in the eye, and said, "You opened it, didn't you?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. She sat on my couch like her legs couldn't hold her up anymore. "It doesn't stop now," she said. "Not unless you do what I did." I asked her what that meant. She reached into her coat and pulled out the key. The key. "I took it once," she said. "Locked it up, sealed the door. Pretended it was over, but it never really ends. It just waits for someone else to find it." That night, we went back together. She didn't want to, but she said she owed me that much. We brought a heavy-duty padlock, chains, and a tube of industrial-grade sealant. I don't know if it would do anything, but it felt like something. We locked the door, bolted it. Then we poured the sealant into every crack, every hinge, until it looked like the door had never been there at all. Before we left, Sarah handed me a match and a bottle of lighter fluid. We set fire to everything in that cleaning closet. Shoebox, old uniforms, every useless item. We stood in the parking lot in silence, watching the flames flicker through the back door. I don't work at Pizza Hut anymore. I moved out of Vermont 3 weeks later, got a job in another state, changed my number, stopped answering unknown calls. I haven't seen Sarah since that night. But sometimes when I'm up late and everything's quiet, I think I hear it again. That dragging sound, that faint knock under the floor. I know it doesn't make sense. I know people will say I imagined it, but I lived it. I was there. And whatever was in that basement, it knew my name.